privilege to welcome our three speakers today: Dr. Glenville Liebert of St. Kitts and Nevis, Geraldine Halls of Guyana, and Bernard Warner, of Antigua and Barbuda, who are going to share their screen and their presentation on the Caribbean embracing horticulture therapy for the empowerment of persons with disabilities as a community-based rehabilitation strategy. Dr. Glenville E. Liebert is an anaesthetist and proud Nevisian. Trained at the University of the West Indies and in the UK, he obtained fellowship of the Royal Colleges of Anaesthesia in the UK and Ireland, and is chair of the Caribbean Community-Based Rehabilitation Network Steering Committee. Ms. Geraldine Mason Halls is from Guyana, South America. She trained as a physiotherapist at the West Middlesex Hospital, England, qualifying as a member of the Chartered Society of Physiotherapists. And then in 2018, Ms. Mason Halls received the Golden Arrow of Achievement from the Government of Guyana for her dedication and service in rehabilitation. And I'm going to let Bernard introduce you himself when it comes to his presentation. I'm going to pass you over now to Glenville, and I'm going to share the screen on his behalf and click through the slides for him. It's my real privilege to welcome Glenville Liebert.
Okay. Thank you so very much, Fiona, and thank you, Trellis, for this opportunity to present at this seminar, your third international seminar on gardening for therapy, lessons from around the world. My name is Dr. Glenville Liebert, and I am from the Isle of Nevis, as you were just told, and I'm an anesthesiologist, and you want to know why am I doing horticulture therapy? Well, my personal journey is that I do work for the St. Kitts Nevis Social Security Board, and I have to evaluate patients applying for disability benefits. And from that experience, next slide please, from that experience I get to appreciate that patients who are applying for disabilities are facing serious problems of stigma discrimination in their return to the workplace or back to society. And nothing structural was being done to help them overcome those hurdles. And that led me to discover CBR around 2010 in an email group called HIFA. Next search, please. From that email group, I learned about CBR as a community development strategy, which was promoted by the WHO since 1917 at the Alma Ata Convention, where they want health for all by the year 2000. And CBR was part of that strategy to equalize services for persons with disability, using their community relations and connections to provide for better provision of services. So I made a link with Mr. Hugh Carnegie of Holland, and we began a research project which showed that CBR was a viable option to help persons with disability in Nevis and St. Kitts. And that led me to discover the Caribbean CBR, the American CBR network. Next slide, please. Now, CBR, the background of it is based on the 5 pillars of the CBR matrix. When the guidelines were revised in 2010, you have health, education, livelihood, social services, and empowerment. And this forms the core of what we promote as CBR practitioners. So we want people to understand that CBR is community-based rehabilitation. It is promoted by the WHO and is a strategy of empowering persons with disabilities and their family, their social connections, to make better provision for true inclusion and participation in the mainstream of social activities. And where you are working in health, education, livelihood sector, social sector, empowerment sector, there is a role for you to play in helping persons to properly rehabilitate. Next slide, please. So that's me at my office. There is my wife, my son, and one of my office staff, and I'm a map of the Caribbean showing that we are bridging the islands across the Caribbean to build this network of persons who are aligned with the CBR matrix and guidelines to provide for persons with disabilities. Now, next slide, please. Okay, so that's the Caribbean CBI network, which we are trying to build across the Caribbean, linking from Belize in the northwest to Guyana in the southeast. And of course, Suriname, the Dutch Islands, all the CARICOM countries, in other words, are welcome to be part of the Caribbean CBI network. Next slide, please. So the CBI network is part of the Americas CBI network. The Caribbean CBI is part of the Americas CBI network. The CBI network of the Americas began around 2006 as part of the global strategy to promote the convention and the rights of disabled persons. And CBI was promoted as one of the pillars of the implementation of the UN Convention. And so they agreed that in the world they should have different CBI networks in the global geographical region. They have the Americas network, the African network, and the Asia Pacific network. So the American network had an agreement which was formed in 2011 in Costa Rica. Next slide, please. This is how the American network is constituted. You have 6 different nodes. And I just highlight the Caribbean node, which we form part. Up until 2013, when I came into the CBI network, the Caribbean node was not yet activated. So we were given a charge to go back to the Caribbean and activate the Caribbean node, which we've been doing from 2014 up until now. And truth be told, the Caribbean have embraced this CBI message as we went around the different countries promote the CBI guidelines, CBI matrix, and the CBI strategy. Next slide, please. So this is just a history of the CBI movement globally, beginning in 2003 when they reviewed the CBI guidelines, and they had the first global conference of CBI in 2012. So next slide, please. Just a glance of how networks operate. You have different forms of network. You have the circular network, the cascading network, the interlocking network, and the overlapping networks. But they're all means of exchange, building relationships and collaboration to strengthen individuals and groups that are part of the network. Next slide, please. Another view of how the networks are provided. You have the national, sub-regional, regional, and global arrangement of CBI networks. And I said that they are a means of collective action for empowerment, a clearinghouse for knowledge of directory of services providers, and fostering relationships and accepting resources. Next slide, please. We have the global CBI network, which team is inclusive and empowered communities. Next slide, please. Move on quickly. So here is the global map of these different CBI networks around the world. And we form part of the American CBI network, as I said earlier. But then you have the African and the Asia Pacific networks. Next slide, please. And these are the history of the American CBI congresses. 2006, 10, 11, 2013, that's when I came into the CBI movement. I was told to go and activate the Caribbean node. Then 2017 was the 4th Congress, and the 5th was held in Antigua just last year because of COVID and other things. There was some delay. Next slide, please. So that's me at the 3rd Congress in Medellin with Solange Garcia of Colombia and Eugene Thompson of Aruba, who did some research with me in Nevis back in 2011 that got me into the CBI journey. Next slide, please. This steering committee that formed the Caribbean CBI network that was inaugurated in 2014 when we had our first meeting in Aruba alongside the Caribbean Public Health Agency annual scientific meeting. So that's Anthony Mills of St. Kitts, myself in the middle there, Eugenia of Aruba, her colleague, this Shirin Bashma of Trinidad, Dr. Dick from Trinidad, and Eugenia's colleague from Aruba. That's what the steering committee that was first installed when the Caribbean network was started in 2014 in Aruba. Next slide, please. So fast forward, we had meetings in several countries: Grenada, Turks and Caicos, Guyana, Antigua, and St. Kitts and Nevis. And we met Bernard Warner in Antigua, in Turks and Caicos in 2016, and he has been a very passionate advocate for CBI and CBID. Next slide, please. So during the Zoom lockdown, the COVID lockdown, we had some Zoom meetings and the network strengthened by those virtual collaboration as we were planning the Congress. So we had several Zoom meetings, and then we started horticulture therapy, introduced to us by our colleagues from Guyana, which Geraldine will explain to you shortly. Next slide, please. So we had a display of the work done in Nevis and sent it at the CARPA meeting, and we got the best prize, the prize for the best poster at that CARPA meeting in 63, because CBR is based on research. And so we want us to encourage folks to document what you do and present your work at different meetings like what we are doing now. Next slide, please. So the success lesson learned over the years that we need persons who are highly motivated. CBI is research-based. We need government support and commitment, and we need to have networking and advocacy skills. And we work towards empowering the DPOs, that is, disabled people's organization and other NGO groups, and provide a platform for ongoing dialogue and sharing. Next slide, please. So through this CBI program, we've made partners with Partners of America, who introduced us to farmer program and horticulture therapy, which they were doing with the Guyana CBI group. And so in 2021, we were introduced to CBI to horticulture therapy as a formal way of strengthening the CBI network. And as you can see, the rest is history. And why we are here today, that the Caribbean has really embraced horticulture therapy as a means of providing activities for persons with disabilities at different levels of organization. And as we had this discussion with Dr. Stowell, we realized that folks want to learn more about horticulture therapy, and we've been having regular Zoom meetings on a Friday afternoon, and we have a WhatsApp group where we're sharing information, and we continue the dialogue around the Caribbean as we try to learn more about horticulture therapy. And we are so glad for this opportunity to share with you what we have done, and we are thankful to Partners of America and Dr. Stowell, who was recruited by them to do a need assessment as to how the Caribbean is ready to learn more about horticulture therapy. So next slide, please, and then I think we should be wrapping up shortly. So these are some of the collaborations that we have started. Well, USAID, which is the parent organization of Partners of America from the farm program. They have a program in Trinidad, Guyana, Jamaica. We have University of Technology in Jamaica. And we have the University of Guyana as well, which are part of the conversation. The University of Tennessee, the IECA, International American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture, will be part of the conversation. The Belize group, the University of Guyana, and the St. Nevis, Dominica, Jamaica. These are all countries and groups that have been part of the conversation as we build awareness and promote horticulture therapy throughout the Caribbean in the last 2 to 3 years. Next slide, please. So this is preparing for the CBI Congress in Antigua, which was held last October. Next slide, please. It was a great success. And these are some of the delegates at the CBI Congress in Antigua. This Mr. Warner at his project in Antigua, which you will hear about shortly. And that's Mr. Miller, he's a wheelchair user at Mr. Warner's project in Antigua. Next slide, please. There again, some pictures from the Congress in Antigua, where people come from different countries in the Caribbean across the world, USA, Canada, to join with us at that conversation. Next slide, please. So some of the lessons learned about this conversation is that we need to have curriculum development. We need to continue to build partnerships around the Caribbean for horticulture therapy. We need to have a cadre of vocational therapists who embrace horticulture therapy as part of their regular workflow. And listening to the programs this week at these seminars, I'm beginning to get ideas of how we could move to the next step here in the Caribbean. And we're grateful for Trellis and for Dr. Stowell and others in this conversation to help us along this journey as we get persons with disabilities, their service providers, physical therapists, occupational therapists, doctors, nurses, in tune with horticulture therapy. I hope I haven't gone over my time, and I thank you so very much for your time and attention, and I pass on to my colleague, Mr. Warner, and Geraldine and Mr. Warner. Thank you so very much for your attention. That's it.
Thank you, Glenville. That was fantastic. Geraldine, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Great, that's lovely. You're up next. We can't see you, but we saw you briefly at the beginning. So if you're loud and clear, and there you are, fantastic. Just tell me when you want to click the next slide. Over to you.
Okay, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share the experiences of horticultural therapy in Guyana. First, I need to tell you a little bit about where is Guyana. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yes, Guyana is part of South America, on the northern part of South America, and it is also a part of the Caribbean, historically, culturally, politically. So it is not difficult to understand how we became involved in the Caribbean CBR network. Next slide, please. Yes, I must say a little bit about how was CBR introduced to Guyana. And that was in 1986 when a colleague of mine, Dr. Brian O'Toole, and I recognized that there was some unserving of children with disabilities in Guyana. And so thought that we work together, he as a psychologist, educational psychologist, and for myself as a physiotherapist, to develop a strategy. And we saw that CBR, community-based rehabilitation, offered the kind of approach to reach those children who were underserved or unserved. So we focus on rural and hinterland communities. When I say hinterland, I'm talking about communities which are in the interior of the country, and those communities are mainly inhabited by indigenous persons. We thought that it was possible to train volunteers who had an interest, who were themselves persons with disability, who were the parents of children with disabilities, teachers, and any other person who volunteered to work in this program. We spent a lot of time doing community education as well as parent education. And in order for this training to be replicated, we were developing training manuals. As a matter of fact, these manuals became very popular, and other countries asked for copies of it, and so it was translated into a number of languages. Okay, next slide. But as you could understand, the children did not remain children. So from 1986 to the present, we have in our CBR program children as well as adults. We have cross disabilities, so it was not one type of disability. And as I mentioned before, we did a lot of produced a lot of training material. And in order to take the program forward, we developed partnerships with government, with regional administration, local administration, national, international agencies and organizations, with individuals, as we call those persons friends of CBR. This led to quite a range of activities. We did poetry shows as part of our public education activities. As you could imagine, in those days, the social media was not readily available. So we used whatever means we had available to us at the time. Next slide, please. Okay. In order to CBR over those years, we recognized we had made a lot of inroads. We were able to reach many individuals, and the program expanded and had lots of success. Which led to trained in different professional fields. We had also persons who were trained to be medical doctors, social workers, teachers, artists, and so on. So many successes. But we have recognized as time has gone on that there is need to review what we had been doing in CBR and maybe to redefine, to restructure, and generally to have a new approach. As part of that, we saw that there was always need to talk with the people. So we went into the communities. We've spoken with young men, young women with disabilities. We've been into hinterland communities and reached parents, reached the community members for them to share with us their thoughts, their views, their aspirations for persons with disabilities. So as I said, we had successes, but there was need for us to look again and see what was available. So when we were approached by partners of the America's Farmer to Farmer project through Dr. Kelvin Craig, we recognized that that provided another strategy within that was so alike to or so aligned with community-based rehabilitation that it was possible for us to include that as another way of working in the interests of persons with disabilities for their empowerment. And so we had at least 3 contacts with Partners of America in order to look at this strategy for empowerment of persons with disabilities. This resulted in about 2011 that we had an initial contact with Partners of America Farmer to Farmer project, which is funded through US aid. That was I would consider a pilot project. And then in 2019, we had another contact, and this time it brought a volunteer called Megan Reagan. And at that time, we looked at 3 sites of CBR. And those are sites which were spread across the country. I won't call the names because they wouldn't, you perhaps are not familiar, but they were centers or sites which were spread many miles, over 60 miles away from the center. Interestingly, in this CBR program, we never focused upon Georgetown, the capital, but we went out into rural communities. So it was always to be able to travel those distances. Then in 2019, we had, as I said, we had that visit from Maureen Reagan, sorry. And then in 2020, Partners of the America approached us again to see whether it was possible to undertake any further work in horticultural therapy. And that's how we became involved with this time in 2021 with Dr. Derek Stowell. And we thought here in Guyana, since CBR is never one to just sit on CBR, we always share our experiences with others, other organizations of persons with disabilities, or other organizations which are involved in the area of disability. And so Dr. Stowell, having got the consent of US aid, he worked with us in terms of helping us to expand to the Caribbean. And so the Caribbean CBR network became involved. In this regard, we had a number of virtual meetings. It was a period in which COVID still had a number of protocols in that people were not able to travel so easily into Guyana. And so we had a number of virtual meetings and agreed upon developing a survey to assess the interest of countries in the Caribbean, to assess the needs of persons with disabilities, leaders of organizations of persons with disabilities, and persons who were interested generally to be a part of the program. These meetings led to the development and preparation of the assessment forms, which were then distributed. And I believe at least 8 countries from the Caribbean got involved, and about 100 or just over 100 persons responded to these questionnaires. It was out of the report from Dr. Stowell, which led to a number of recommendations. And these recommendations were based on what people expressed in relation to what they would want to see in training programs, what interests they had. Some people spoke about how horticultural therapy could be used to help them in earning, to make them financially stronger. And one of the key areas in the recommendation was the training of persons as an initial step in terms of working with persons with disabilities as leaders, in terms of helping them to understand basics in horticultural therapy. I'm sorry.
Geraldine, that's a 5-minute to go. And do you want me to click on any slides?
Yes, I was saying earlier, if you could go to the last set of slides, the 3 slides, I think 4 slides towards the end. With some, yes. Telling us about what were the goals, and Maureen Reagan was recruited as the trainer in this, and she identified at least 4 major goals: cognitive goals, social goals, emotional goals, and physical goals. Next slide, please. Now, we use 4 sites in this training program, and it was done for a 3-day at each site. And one of the key things was to use plants and flowers as an introduction to talking about themselves. And we had persons who were blind, persons who had hearing impairment, persons, young children, all. Next slide, please. I want to just mention one thing. In the discussion, we learned that there were some persons who actually had suicidal thoughts. And this, through these sessions of learning about flowers, what their parents did in the past, and so on, helped them in sort of dealing with some of these issues. We also had persons learning how to plant seeds and sharing seeds, what kinds of soils to use for what types of seed. Next slide, please. We also had a number of them just having the experience of how to deal with foods, because some persons already had experiences of cooking and so on. But one of the areas was in terms of artwork using plants and flowers. And then the last slide in that group, where persons also learned how to use fruits and vegetables to cut them up for making salsa and so on. I just am giving you just an insight into what could be possible in horticultural therapy, because it deals with the body, mind, spirit, and so on. And so I want to thank all of you for listening. And if you do have questions, I'll be willing to give any answers in the question and answer period. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Geraldine. I was just struggling to find my mute button. That was fantastic. Can I invite Bernard to speak, unmute, and tell us your story, Bernard?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bernard Warner, and I'm the president of Antigua and Barbuda Association of Persons with Disabilities, and we're a cross disability umbrella organization. And behind me is a team, a group of young persons, and one Robert Dale who is deaf, and we comprised of the team that are keeping horticulture therapy and pushing for inclusive environment for people who are living with disabilities here in Antigua and Barbuda and also the Caribbean. And we're going to be sharing the importance of sponsorship to advance horticulture therapy programs and empowering people with disabilities through self-help programs, how horticulture therapy, CBR and CBID are transforming the lives of persons living with disabilities in Antigua and Barbuda. We want to share how it all started, and horticulture therapy and community-based as a grassroots program, which we strongly believe in. We'll be sharing some personal testimonies of real-life experiences by individuals who are living with disabilities. We do have a strong environmental protection vision. And of course, we do hydroponic farming, beekeeping. And my presentation will consist of photos and videos to share with everyone the importance and the benefits or the beneficial approach that can be used as a poverty reduction tool when HT, horticulture therapy, and CBR combined using a method of direct funding to vulnerable population, such as my group. So could you go to the next slide, please? So our group was sponsored by the United Nations Office for Project Service under the Global Environment Fund, which is the GEF Small Grant Program. And in August of 2021, and that's when we learned of horticulture therapy through one of the Zoom meetings with Dr. Liebert and Mr. Devlin Hall. And we quickly include horticulture therapy as part of our project proposal to Jeff, and later was awarded US $50,000 to do our project. And the project entitled the use of smart technologies to increase food production, improve security for persons with disabilities in Antigua and Barbuda. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Can you go to the next slide, please?
Oh, sure.
Next slide.
I clicked 2 slides. Did you see those already, Bernard?
Not as yet.
There was the one with the lettuce, and then there's this one with how it all started.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So this is how it started. After we received the grant in August of 2021, and we quickly hired 2 guys to assist in building the foundation for which we were going to lay our content. And what you see in it, that's myself there and Mr. Robert Gale and Jermaine Jones. We were very much involved in the project. So every step of the way, you will see both of us as a part of the project. And next slide, please. Next. So we strongly believe in self-help program. We didn't want to just use the money to hire guys or contractors to work. We wanted to be a part of the project. So at the end of the day, we can enjoy and share that same vision of membership about self-help programs, which is very important in the lives of people with disabilities, because over the years, what we have found is that a lot of what we've heard of is we're doing for them, and we want to say, look, we're going to change that narrative and begin to shift the discussion towards people with disability giving back to society, people with disability doing things for not just for themselves, but to their colleagues. So that's why we believe strongly in self-help programs. Next slide, please. So we were extremely elated that day when the container arrived. Of course, we would have already laid the foundation. As you can see from the photos, it's basically a bare land, nothing at all, just dirt. But we had a vision that we could have transformed that environment into something tropical. And there's Germany in the background there. Every step of the way, you would see us there, because we actually decided we're not going to sit back and just allow the project to be built without our input, because it's about us, and we were basically the managers to oversee the building of the project. Next slide, please. So again, just giving you a different angle and how the land looks from the beginning. And this is our mandate, because we do believe that when I met Dr. Glenville Liebert and Ms. Geraldine Hall in Turks and Caicos back in 2016, I immediately came back to Antigua and invited them over to Antigua, wrote a project proposal, again, got funded, and Ms. Geraldine Hall and Dr. Liebert were brought over to Antigua to teach us about CBR. And that really embedded the vision in us, in how we can really utilize CBR, which laid the foundation for us today, pushing for CBR in Antigua and Barbuda. Next slide, please. So this is Robert Gale. We have a joke about him. Robert Gale, who is sitting right here. We often call him our human backhoe, because he's like one of the strongest guy in the team, and he's the one who's physical, the physical strength. I'm an amputee. Our secretary here, Shadis, is physically challenged. The young lady here, she's a wheelchair user. So he does a lot of the digging and the lifting for us, and we do appreciate him, because without him, we wouldn't have achieved. So we just want to highlight the cross disability aspect of our organization, where all of us came together and make this project work for Antigua and Barbuda, and excellent for the Caribbean. Next slide, please. So there you go again. Robert Gale, who is deaf, and Jermaine Jones, who is physically challenged, working through the night. I mean, the photos should tell a lot for what we're saying, because imagine German is in a wheelchair and he's running the concrete, he's painting the container, and this is a true example of CBR. It's a true example of what we call inclusive development, where people with disability are not just sitting on the sideline expecting that someone to do it for them. We decide as an organization, we make it our mandate to do all that we can in our power to ensure that we leave our mark in the landscape and not just be receivers. So next slide, please. So we believe that our project should have been fully accessible to all people. And I say all people because everyone, regardless of the person impairment, and we want to say, we want to use the proper language, because most often you see language like disabled persons or handicapped people. So we want to establish a people first language. So this is really setting the stage where you see Jermaine Jones there again. Every stage of the project, one of us are there. I'm the cameraman, so you may have seen some of the shots. So we're there overseeing, ensuring that everything is designed and kept according to the plan. And so Jermaine had to test out the ramp. He had to ensure that the place is comfortable for him. I mean, everything has to be done just right. So this project was designed not for us, but by us, of and for us. Next slide, please. And you can see how the container looks there, from a rusty bucket to a nicely painted, beautiful container that transformed the environment. This is us again. Yes, we did it. So yes, you see. So we're the one who actually laid every brick. Robert will bring them, Jermaine would help to mix the concrete. I sat and lay the blocks. These blocks was actually built by a gentleman who he was a contractor. He fell off a roof and got paralyzed, and he started a small business that built decoration stone. He died just about a year. Eric Charles. He's St. Lucian, and he lived in Antigua for many years when he got injured, and he built these stones, which we then use into the project as a reminder of Eric Charles, who died a short while ago. And as you can see, this project is a self-help program, and we recognize again that CBID has to be core in order for us to develop horticulture therapy in Antigua and Barbuda. And our project site is an example of what self-help program can do when people with disability realize their strengths and their potential and don't be told or believe that you can't because you may be in a wheelchair, or you may be physically challenged, or you may be blind, or you're deaf. We have to get away from that narrative and ensure that everyone knows their worth, and we're doing it here in Antigua and Barbuda. Next slide, please. So we believe in recycling, and we use a lot of recycled materials at our project site. Again, we get these bottles before they make it to the landfill. We took them, we cut them, and we use them as grow bed. A lot of people think that to do a horticulture therapy project, it has to be expensive. And we said, no, we're going to use the local materials, the recycled materials, and we're going to transform what would have been damaging materials to the landscape and turn it into something beautiful. Next slide, please. So, of course, we were the one who built all our waste box. We use recycled material, as you can see in the box up in the left-hand corner on the construction of raised beds for planting. Those are recycled galvanized. They recycle 2x4s, and this is Robert Gale. That's my bus, and we use the bus to transport the soil. So we utilize everything in our surrounding, from the vehicle, from the recycled materials, so that we can have a low footprint within the community. So that's how we end up and we're able to build. And we're still doing it today. We're still using recycled materials from discarded beds, you name it, to build the boxes, the raised boxes. Next slide, please. So now we launched the project. We're talking about coming from, we received the fund in August of 2021, and by January of by December of 2021, we were ready to launch the project, but we were advised to get it a bit more intact, so we launched it in January for the new year of 2022. Of course, we believe in partnership, and we learned of the idea of horticulture therapy through farmers out of Guyana. We partner with farmers through the guidance of Miss Geraldine Hall and Dr. Liebert, and we've been working with partners of the Americas, Caribbean disability leaders, and of course our title sponsor, SGP, Jeff Small Grant Program, that is basically the hallmark of our support in terms of our funding. And we brand it on the horticulture therapy community-based rehabilitation project. And we believe in leadership and participation of persons with disabilities towards an inclusive accessibility and a sustainable post-COVID-19 world. And as you can see, we really believe in what we're doing, and we believe in partnership. So Antigua choose to include all of our sponsors and partners in our promotion. That is a good example that the Caribbean should take on when promoting whatever you're doing within your country. Next slide, please. So I will ask if you can play this one for me, please.
The Antigua and Barbuda Association of Persons with Disabilities is further empowering its members using a community-based rehabilitation initiative. The association has launched a program for the use of climate-smart techniques to increase food production and improve food security for their members. The association's president, Bernard Warner, explains the benefits of this initiative.
This project here, using smart technology to improve food security, will help as a part of a regional effort to shore up the abilities and to shore up the rehabilitation process for people living with disability here in Antigua and Barbuda.
Warner further explains people living with disabilities are capable of driving beneficial changes in their respective communities.
Where we are today is as a result of many small steps that fill the shoes, the feet of giants. And I say this because many people sometimes do not take the time to recognize the abilities and the skills that people who are living with disabilities bring to their community.
It will also include a horticultural therapy component, as flowers were also planted in addition to various fruits and vegetables. The association's treasurer, Wendy Valentine, shares how this could help members.
The plan is to make sure that everyone with a disability that's a part of the association has a raised bed in their backyard so they can have food to grow and, in turn, to help themselves.
The theme of the project is leadership and participation of persons with disabilities towards an inclusive, accessible, and sustainable post-COVID world. Shanikisha Francis, ABS News.
Next slide, please.
Thanks, Bernard. We are running short of
The
time.
Antigua
Is there a slide you would like me to jump to, because the next
Okay, you could run through them for me one by one, and then you could come to the last slide, please. So we could share some of the photos that capturing the hallmark of what is happening here in Antigua and Barbuda, and showing the members who actually are making it possible by coming out on a weekly basis and participating in the project. We do hydroponic, as you can see. We have testimony which would not be able to play.
Sorry, I'm so sorry to not play these, but we'll make sure they're in the video and available.
Okay, good. So you can come now. So
this one I have to play, right?
You want to come back? You want to G with the big boys? Now you the wrong, kitty, you the wrong, get enough with drink, what a drop cup. Hey, so you see how the thing goes? How the thing goes? Oh, you tell me who can do? And who?
So I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity. The ABAPD is really committed to ensure that horticulture therapy remain a prominent staple in the diet of Antigua and Barbudans, and hope that what we are doing in Antigua can greatly empower the region and abroad to not give up on the idea that people with disabilities can contribute and be the leading agents for these programs and not just the receiver or on the receiving end. It's time for us to recognize that we as a community has both the educational and the skills to guide the progress, and not just being the persons who are receiving or the receivers of the stuff, because many people who are not physically or known to be people with disabilities are suffering from mental health and all type of challenges, and can learn from us, because we know that we have disabilities, we know that we have a challenge, and we're happy. We're not going to make it stop us. So we're going to lead.
That came across loud and clear. We really enjoyed that. Can't thank you enough.
You're welcome.
So really, you've done your job in convincing everyone here if they needed convincing. And just invite everyone to thank Glenville, Bernard and Geraldine for their contributions. I think we all feel inspired and moved and educated and convinced.